Anubis was not a normal dog. It gave the creeps to everyone around it and scared any other dog that dared to go face to face against it. And even though his new owner, Jason M., knew this, he would have never imagined the extreme situation his recently adopted pet would put him in. The moment Jason walked through the door of the vet, he could feel that something was off, but he sat in the waiting room, completely unaware that the police were about to come in and make him regret ever buying this dog. But it was already too late when Jason realized what was happening, and even though he wanted to grab Anubis and make a run for it, the police had arrived. Jason couldn't understand. Why had the vet called the police? Had he done something wrong? Was the dog really that dangerous? He did not want to give up without a fight, but when a policeman started explaining Jason the situation, his demeanor changed completely. It all made sense now. Of course, Anubis was not an ordinary dog. How could I have possibly missed it for so long? He thought. The reason behind it changed everything for Jason, and it'll also blow your mind. Welcome to Wonderbot Animals, where the wildest stories of the animal world come to life. But why did the vet call the police on Jason and Anubis? The answer is shocking. It all started on a boring Monday after Jason was driving out of his work. Maybe it was because he could feel his life getting duller and duller, or because his job wasn't treating him too well, but for some reason he chose to stop at the corner of the farmer's market on that day. A coworker of his had already told him of that place, more of a dog pen than a refuge or a stand. And having grown surrounded by dogs in his childhood, Jason constantly felt a need. There was a hole in his heart with the shape of a furry friend. He looked through the caged canines with a mix of compassion and lack of commitment. The seller was hurrying him to either buy something or go away, as it was getting late. But just about as Jason was turning back to his car, the unexpected happened, and he locked eyes with it. Dark yellow eyes, disciplined but intense. Sharp ears pointed to the roof of its cage, a calm but powerful dog, staring back at him as with a strange understanding of the situation they were both in. He couldn't simply look away. Just what sort of secrets were those eyes trying to tell? Even though Jason felt a bit scared of the dog, his mouth had already uttered the name he thought it deserved. "Anubis," he whispered, and it was like a spell that sealed the deal. The seller once again grunted something at him, but this time Jason didn't apologize meekly, and instead he asked about that pitch-black furless dog. The seller didn't look like someone who cared particularly about the caged animals. Jason's spine shivered as the indifferent seller said something about how he'd probably have to hand that dog to animal control for them to put it down. "It's just too damn mean-looking," Jason recalls the seller saying. "There's something off about that animal for sure." As Jason inquired more, he found out that Anubis had only recently come to the seller via some shady deal. And now, knowing so many things about that exotic canine, Jason knew he just couldn't leave Anubis behind. Despite his common sense, he was already asking, "How much for that one?" Part of him feared that the seller would charge a price that couldn't afford, but thankfully it was more as if the seller had just been waiting for the perfect excuse to get rid of that dog. And so Jason bought Anubis for an unexpectedly low price. He knew his wife well enough to know that she wouldn't let him bring a dog to the house if he asked for permission, but Jason couldn't simply bear the idea of Anubis being sent to a shelter and killed. So even though it was a rash decision, Jason knew that he would think of a reasonable explanation while driving back home. Jason paid the shady seller and led the dog into his truck. Anubis didn't put up any resistance, and just as quietly as before, it sat on the seat next to Jason's without growling a single time. Maybe Anubis had previously gone through some training? Jason thought that maybe the composure of his unusual partner came from a military or a police background. Would that make sense, Anubis being a police dog that had failed to make the cut? For what reason? As Jason drove, his mind was getting filled with more and more questions that worried him, despite his strange connection with the animal next to him. He and Monica, his wife, were the proud parents of a set of 4-year-old twins. They loved them more than anything else in the world. Who knew how Anubis could act around them? Who could even know how the kids would react to such a dangerous-looking dog? There was no mistake in assuming there was something different, noble in Anubis, but this was still a large and eerie black beast that could traumatize his family. He knew for sure that Monica wouldn't like such a scary-looking animal, but he hoped that deep within their hearts, his family would also find that strange thing that made Anubis special and had captivated Jason. But what he could have never imagined is what happened next. When they arrived home, Jason realized that he hadn't yet heard Anubis make a single sound. Maybe it couldn't talk. Jason hadn't thought about that, but now, as his family waited for him at the door, he had to face them with all of his confidence and a smile. He would later repeat the scene as it follows. I could feel the stare of Monica coming through the window, furious, eyes like daggers. I stood still on the porch and slowly walked towards the entrance while Melvin and Marty, the twins watched the animal in complete awe, as if it was some sort of hero. To be honest, I was incredibly tense, holding my breath and all, tightening my grip on the leash until my knuckles whitened. Would Anubis suddenly become aggressive after facing my children? I didn't know. I didn't want to know. But at that point, we had already gone too far as to turn around. Jason remembers. Melvin and Marty stormed through the door before Monica could stop them. Anubis, despite his terrifying appearance and being as tall as the children, didn't move a single inch, nor made a sound. Monica rushed up behind the twins, fear on her face, and extended her arms as if to protect her house. But Anubis, calm as ever, sat down and puffed. The children started jumping with joy, repeating how excited they were now that they had the coolest-looking dog ever, thanking Jason. Even though Anubis didn't seem to mind the touch, Jason and Monica told the kids to go to their room while they had an adult conversation about what did they do with Anubis. Monica stormed Jason with questions. What had he been thinking? How could he have made such a decision without even thinking of asking her? Why would he buy a suspicious-looking dog from a random man at the farmer's market? Jason waited for Monica to get everything out of her chest, and then he apologized. I know I should have told you more, but I just couldn't leave him out there. They were going to put him out, he explained as he could, and offered a hug to his wife. Look, I know it bothers you, but can we just keep Anubis for a while? A few minutes later, Monica's anger lessened. It's fine. But just a while. We can't take care of that dog right now. This is not the time for a pet, and we don't even know what it can do, Jason. I'd really prefer if you could find another home for it soon, but to be honest, I don't hate him. I'm just worried about the twins. You know how rowdy they can be. She added, and speaking of, I don't think the twins hate Anubis either. Monica laughed as she pointed to the stairs, where Melvin and Martin were peeking at the dog, thinking they were hidden. The dog looked cautiously as the kids extended their little hands towards it, as if confused by their sense of innocence and familiarity. But that was not the most incredible thing that happened on that day. At night, Anubis did something unique that made the whole family amazed. The whole day had been cloudy, but it was the early morning when a terrible storm finally broke. Outside, the branches of the trees were falling down, and no one dared to go out. Inside, the water seeped from the ceiling, and the windows shook with each gust and thunder. And while Jason and Monica were trying to fix the leaks, they left the children alone. It was Monica who remembered it first, and she immediately ran to their room, scared as she couldn't hear their cries. They were young, and the twins had always been afraid of rainstorms. But what she saw there shocked her and completely changed her mind about the dog. In the middle of the twins' room, the kids stood quietly, calm as ever. Their arms were extended in a hug, and right between them was Anubis, who looked at Monica with a composed expression. "Do you know if dogs can speak?" Monica would later report her question. "I mean, of course not in our way, but in theirs. A language of signs, gestures, and actions. I had never been sure of it. But at that moment, I swear Anubis was trying to tell me through his eyes that it was all okay, and he had the situation under control. He was sitting straight, robust as ever, almost as tall as the children, and I remember it very well. The two of them were holding on to him like a lifesaver, and while commenting on how warm and funny he felt, their nerves bit by bit were disappearing. I could have never imagined such a mean-looking dog acting with that level of tenderness. I had a total change of heart, she'd say. Much to Jason and Monica's relief, Anubis proved to be the perfect partner for the family. Tempered and kind, capable, but still menacing enough as to deter any potential burglars or dangers. And while in some cases Jason still looked at him and felt a little nervous or scared. It worried him that throughout the whole time they had Anubis in the house, the dog hadn't shown any sort of emotions or the excitement you'd expect to see in a dog. Anubis remained silent and gentle, but distant. The whole season it remained with Jason's family. Still, Jason knew he could trust his newfound partner completely. When Jason walked Anubis around the park, its very presence seemed to intimidate all of his neighbors. Joggers, other dog owners, or even just people trying to pass by. They would all prefer to move to the other side of the street in order not to face such an unusual dog. Some even pointed at Anubis and murmured things behind Jason's back. Had nobody even seen a dog like this before? Jason was starting to worry. "But I didn't know just how strange things were about to get," Jason would confess. "Until now, there had been some signs that I just couldn't ignore. I still didn't know anything about its background, nor about who had trained Anubis to be that way. But I was so happy with the energy Anubis had brought to our home that I hadn't even think about the most basic stuff." It was Monica who, on a Saturday morning, confronted me again while sipping her coffee. "Jason, I think it's time you start searching for answers about Anubis's health or origin. Do you even have the slightest idea what breed of dog he is?" That questioning impacted him. Jason realized his love for the dog was blinding him of the possible dangers that implied having it bought from such a shady place. His wife, that was slowly falling for Anubis too, stood her ground and kept firm. She gave Jason an ultimatum. If he wanted to take care of that animal, he needed to go to the vet in order to learn its care and health status, and in case they found something dangerous about Anubis, they would have to get rid of him. "I know it seems cruel," Monica said, "but it's necessary. What if Anubis is sick? What if he needs special care that we cannot bring him? I don't like the idea of letting him go to someone else, but I can't stand how much it'll hurt the twins if something happens to him." "How much it'll hurt you." And with 100 worries in his mind, Jason and Anubis found themselves in the car, on their way to the vet. Jason was sure not even something like the vet's office would scare a dog like Anubis, but little did he know it was Jason himself who'd end up scared. What happened next was unbelievable. It was very busy in the waiting room, but as soon as Jason and Anubis entered, all the other pets immediately went silent. People grabbed a tighter hold of their animals' leashes or moved their pets back to the cage. Jason felt uncomfortable. He knew Anubis was different, and he knew that it didn't matter how many times he tried to explain that Anubis wouldn't even hurt a fly. People would always fear the things they didn't want to understand. But it was a little Chihuahua who started it all. It escaped from its owner's leash and started growling at Anubis. As soon as the Chihuahua barked, all the other animals joined it in a chorus against Anubis, scratching the air, hissing at their owners, and trying to get out of the vet. A panicked employee had to walk up to Jason and ask him to leave for a while and wait for their appointment outside. Jason tightened his fist. He wanted to scream and defend his dog, but in the end he simply sighed, disappointed. But perhaps that event was more than just a coincidence, as it allowed Jason to meet with Dr. Jacobs, the senior veterinarian. As Jason waited on the outside, sat down on the entrance with Anubis next to him, a tall man in a long coat walked past them, and then froze still. He was glancing at Anubis, but unlike anyone else, there was no fear in his eyes, nor morbid curiosity. He kneeled next to the scary-looking canine and looked at Anubis thoroughly, as if analyzing it. "Is this dog yours?" he asked. "He is. I was trying to get the vets to check him, but they kicked me out," Jason complained. "I see. Will you wait for me for 5 more minutes?" And then the doctor walked away as abruptly as he appeared. He found the encounter a bit odd. Was it just in his mind, or was Dr. Jacobs way too eager to see Anubis? Jason thought it was strange, but he did come on time. Exactly 5 minutes later, the senior veterinarian walked out of the building to greet Jason and ask him to follow to his office. Part of Jason felt an unexplainable pride as he passed through the other people in the line, those who had previously forced him to move away. Dr. Jacobs closed the door and quietly he checked on Anubis's vital signs. The dog, as always, stood stoic, but Jason kept asking question after question. And the senior vet didn't answer none. Jason could hear muffled voices speaking nervously outside of the office. He distinguished a series of words that worried him. That dog, danger, police, police. Dr. Jacobs then excused himself out of the room and asked Jason to wait for him for another 5 minutes. And once again, Jason waited, but this time he tried to open the door after those 5 minutes had passed and noticed something chilling. It was locked. Did they purposefully trap him? He knocked, but no one would answer, he asked. But it was as if no one was listening. Filled with anger, Jason finally managed to open the door. The vet was waiting for him on the other side of the room. With a calm look on his face, he tried to explain it all to Jason and reassure him that things would be okay. But in Jason's ear, only one phrase was ringing. "I've called the police." Jason looked at Anubis and the dog looked back at him. In just a second, they understood each other's intention. They needed to run and get out of there. Had he been deemed a dog way too dangerous to handle? Did they notice he had bought it from a shady place? Was it part of an illegal breed of dogs? More lost than ever, Jason tried running away, but the police were already outside. A pair of police cars were waiting for him. "If only you could see Anubis like I do," he cried as the policemen and the vets gathered around him. "Then you could see he is not as bad as you're making him to be." But the people around him didn't panic, nor showed any hostility. One of the officers made calming gestures and slowly walked closer to Jason, repeating that he was willing to explain everything. "It's the least we owe you, Mr. M. This isn't your fault, and Anubis will be okay. Just listen." What the policeman revealed was mind-blowing. What Jason had bought wasn't any ordinary dog, and the senior veterinarian had just confirmed it. Anubis, whose real name was Zolo, was a very important dog that belonged to a cult, and its origin was not Egyptian, but rather Mexican. "This is a Mexican Xoloitzcuintl," the doctor added, "one of the oldest dog breeds in the whole world." Zolo was a key player in an Aztec revival cult based in Mexico. He had been trained to be as serious as he could, as it was thought that his role was to spiritually guide the dead into the other world. In the cult, Zolo acted calmly to offer comfort to those whose familiars had passed away. And just a few months ago, Zolo was stolen by non-believers and sold to a black market. "It's a miracle of sorts," Jason would finally add. "Anubis, no, Zolo, passed from hand to hand of people that didn't understand him, sold as a luxury animal all the way to my town. I like to think fate was involved somehow, and it spared Zolo from a horrible destiny at that shady shop. My life would never be the same after that, and I hope he feels free in his life, too." Of course, I didn't want to believe it at first, but all the evidence the doctors and the policemen offered to me added up, and I just knew there was something special about him. In the end, Jason returned the dog back to the authorities, who followed up and brought it all the way to its original owner in Mexico, who treated it, quite literally, like a god. And although Jason couldn't understand the sheer size of what had happened, he felt really glad that his life had connected with that of a special animal like Zolo. And in exchange for listening to Jason's stories with Zolo, the leaders' organization ended up giving Jason a handsome reward for his responsible behavior around their chosen canine. Jason and his family reported that they were able to fix their house with the gifted money, and so they prepared themselves over a couple of months to adopt another dog, one that hopefully isn't involved in any supernatural organizations.